just
It's
in
the net,
totality,
you're right.
you know, it's a graph, right? So, I mean, are we going to get anything that shows the comparison for what you're presenting now with prior years?
I can certainly do that. How far back would you like to see it?
We need at least 3 years. I mean, to me, that's typical of budgets that I've seen in the past.
It isn't typical in this district. This is the template that we've used for some time now. Now, we can produce that for you, but that wouldn't be a reflection of what this board has received for the last 6 years.
We certainly looked at the 3-year averages, and so I can provide budget to actuals because I have it for all of the last 3 years, and I think we actually looked at 5. But the budget book before you is exactly what has been presented in the past, except this year is balanced.
Right. And I know that you had said that. Now, can we talk about page 12 when you're talking about the 3-year budget projection? So this shows the fund balance going from what you're projecting this year to end up with an $82 million fund balance, and in 2019, a $71 million fund balance. So we're down almost $12 million.
Only if things stayed as projected. And every year when we look at this, we revise expenses. We reflect, generally speaking, this is based off of that projection of average daily attendance decreasing by 400. And yet next year you can see that we don't expect it to decrease by that much. And so we've taken all those assumptions that you've held in the past and carried them forward. If we make no modifications to the future, this is a fairly accurate reflection. But every year you adjust, and then you adopt a budget that more accurately reflects, and this year particularly accurately reflects what your activity will be.
Right, and one of our most significant numbers is drawn from the daily attendance, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this daily attendance number that you're looking at and projecting with, does that take into account the demographic study that was done a couple years ago?
Yes, ma'am, I believe it does. If I recall correctly, they anticipated enrollment would decrease by 400 students per year. With the opening of Young Women's Leadership Academy and the growth with open enrollment, we anticipate next year only losing 200. And give me just one moment. Mary, how many did you anticipate for the projection? The 3? 200 or more? Okay, so she's telling me that she left it at a loss of 200 students per year for the future.
And that was based primarily on the Young Women's Leadership Academy? Because we've had open enrollment for a long time.
It's based on what's been happening. So let me go back to that slide. As you recall, in 2012 to 2013, the loss in enrollment was about 800 students. And yet in 2013 to 14, you only lost 345. The next year you lost 8 more than that, but the next year you gained 40 of that. And this year we anticipate a 200 loss. And that's what she used in the projection going forward. So if it's all right with you, I'll provide a board communique with the 3 years of history.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Rosales, you had a question?
Yeah, you kind of answered my question. Going back to the 3-year budget development numbers, in the revenue portion, from 215 through 217, we go for local income from 77.535 million to 75 to 74. Is this based on the shrinkage of the 200?
No. So the local revenue is primarily this property tax.
The tax, yes.
Yes. So with the homestead exemption increasing, we get less property tax revenue.
And then the same thing applies to the state and federal.
On the state and federal, we're actually, if you look at the revised 2015-16 budget, we're going from 7.1 up to 10.7 in federal and about 3 in state, and that's the reflection of the increase from the state to offset the homestead exemption loss, and then the increase in federal reimbursements for special education. So now I'm comparing the 2 outside columns. When I look at state revenue, I'm going from 279 to 282.
Okay, I'm with you, okay.
And then from federal, 7.1 to 10.7. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yes. As far as what I'd like to see on pages 16 through 19,
boy, if someone had this book from last year, that would be good enough right there, because that has the salaries and what everything is projected as. I'd just like to look at even the last year would be okay for me. Instead, I don't know what kind of spreadsheet you're going to come up with, but that's kind of like, at least for a year, if it looked like this, it'd be great. And I know we got one of these books, but I throw stuff out, so.
Is it okay if I just provide you with last year's book? Okay, I think we can do that.
Can I ask also a question?
Yes, ma'am.
In taking consideration of our universal pre-K program, that's all reflected in all of this? Because we do get some money from that, but then we have to pay out expenditures.
It is, but it's based on the history. So we take that into consideration, especially as we're balancing. We're looking at a 3-year average and then including those things. So can I move on to the prevailing wage rate?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Any other questions?
IT, can you bring up that next one, please? Thank you so much. Okay. So this evening,
Can I
I'm bringing...
interject? I just forgot to mention one thing that I think is important for the board to know, and that is that the budget presented does not address any potential future increases to our health and welfare benefits, and it doesn't reflect any increase to the compensation plan. That would remain the same under the current model.
All right, so this evening, I have a presentation regarding the prevailing wage rates. And then tomorrow, or I'm sorry, Wednesday, we'll ask you for action to approve the prevailing wage rates. And so let me give you just kind of a brief description of what this is. Texas Government Code Chapter 2258 requires that the district approve prevailing wage rate by per diem. That is a mouthful. And it applies to any public works under construction, and it also provides that we define worker categories on our projects. The last prevailing wage rate schedule was adopted by Ysleta in 2008 and would probably be considered out of date. So, in order to address that, we have 2 ways we can go. We either have to conduct our own local survey before we approve it, or we must adopt the federal Davis-Bacon wage rates. And so there is a local survey going on. It's being conducted by the city and county and other school districts and other entities. And so probably on Wednesday, you will see an interlocal agreement between us and the city county, allowing us to act as a participant in that survey so that we could then adopt those wage rates that are surveyed locally and not just by Davis-Bacon federally. Another thing to note is that the last Texas survey conducted by Davis-Bacon was in 2012, so I would also consider it outdated. This is just a brief comparison. It does not include all of the trades, but in the first column are the classifications of some general trades that would be familiar to you. In the second column is the Davis-Bacon wage rate for 2012, which is what we are bringing forward to Wednesday for approval. And then in the third column are Ysleta's 2008 wage rates, and in the final column is the difference. So you can see that right off the bat, brick masons and block masons, under the Davis-Bacon, they would make $6.40 more per day. Okay? Generally, these are not huge discrepancies unless you look down at plumbers. And plumbers per day under Davis-Bacon will make $222 more. That is that much more than the local rates are when surveyed by the entities that actually live or work in El Paso. And so, just to summarize, the Davis-Bacon is more comprehensive than what we have right now, which is our 2008 survey, and I believe is outdated. The Davis-Bacon is supported by the Association of General Contractors here in El Paso, and the last Texas survey was done in 2012. For Ysleta, we haven't approved prevailing wages since 2008, and again, those are outdated in my opinion. We're required by law to approve Davis-Bacon or conduct a survey. Obviously, I can't complete a survey in time to get it attached to our bids that are out there for construction right now, so it's required by us to approve the Davis-Bacon until we can get a local survey completed. And then we want to participate in the local survey, and you'll see an interlocal agreement allowing us to do that with the city and county. That's it. Questions?
I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
My first one is, as far as the bond, when those projects were estimated, were they using the current wage rate structure that we have in place now?
No, I believe they used the Davis-Bacon, and I'm looking for John to confirm. He's saying yes, which is part of the reason I'm here before you saying, I need to adopt these because that's what was estimated in the bond projects.
Okay.
If when we complete our local survey and those come back and we include those, estimates will be revised to reflect them, but until then, we won't know.
Okay. Now, whenever we do, if it gets approved on Wednesday, partner with the county city with that wage survey, and it is different than this one that we're adopting or possibly adopting on Wednesday, how will you differentiate which projects will be paid under what structure?
And so when each solicitation goes out to bid for a construction project, the wage rate that you have approved, that schedule is attached to the solicitation. So the ones that are out there right now have 2008 survey in them because that's the last one we've approved. We are asking for your permission now to substitute Davis-Bacon because we believe it's more current. In the fall, I will come back with the local survey, and you can actually go by line, and I'll tell you it's probably 15 pages of by line, but you can choose. We want Davis-Bacon, we want the local, or we want an entirely different rate. And you can approve those, and from there forward, we will include that wage survey with every solicitation that continues to go out. Certainly. At all?
Any other questions? Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you.
Thank you, Lindley. Mr. O'Neill?
Good evening, Dr. Delatorre, Mr. Haggerty, and members of the board. Tonight we have with us our athletic director, Mr. Mike Williams. He's going to be introducing our speaker for this evening. He's going to talk about our concussion protocol and our next steps. Mr. Williams.
President Haggerty, members of the board, Dr. Delatorre. We have with us tonight members of our district concussion oversight team, and they will be presenting on our concussion management program that's utilized in the district. Our spokesperson will be Casey Ronhell. He is the athletic trainer at Hanks High School, and he in turn will introduce the rest of the members of the concussion oversight team.
Good evening, Dr. Delatorre, President Haggerty, members of the board. Prior to getting started this evening, we as a group would like to thank you all for taking the time and interest in our cause when it comes to concussion management and injury tracking across the district. We feel that an informed board can affect great change at many levels. So we are very thankful for taking the time out this evening to lend a listening ear. We would like to also note that it is spring football season right now, so several of our partner athletic trainers are currently finishing up with practice on campus, and they will be joining us here shortly. Before we get started, I would like to go ahead and introduce everyone here. I myself am Casey Rangel from James Hanks High School. To my left, I have Inika Martin from Del Valle High School. We have Nancy Vanley representing Parkland High School. Diana Ramirez representing Riverside High School, and Jade Hill from Riverside High School as well. Liana Armijo from Ysleta High School, Scott Smelzer from Eastwood High School, and Mr. Joe Messenger from Bel Air High School, and Mr. Omar Saad from Del Valle High School. My partner, Oscar Arellano, is still at practice right now and will join us shortly, and Miss Jessica Ferris and Kirk Jackson are also at practice, and David Butterfield as well, but they will be joining us momentarily. Our goals this evening is to go ahead and share with you what we as athletic trainers in the district are doing when it comes to tracking and management of concussions and athletic injuries. So before we get started this evening, we would like to define what a concussion is. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines concussion as a stunning or damaging shattering effect from a hard blow, especially a jarring injury resulting in disruption of cerebral function of the brain. That is a very wordy definition, but I'm going to take a page out of my sports medicine book, okay, that we cover in our classes on campus. I would like to liken the skull to a moving car, okay? The car represents the skull itself, and an unrestrained passenger sitting inside that car represents the brain, okay? When that car were to hit some sort of barrier that causes it to stop, the car itself stops, but the brain inside, represented by the unrestrained passenger, continues to move around, striking various items throughout its surroundings. The same thing happens with the brain in a concussion. The nature of concussion is the movement of the brain inside the skull. When the brain impacts the sides of the skull, causes bleeding, secondary inflammation, that is where the concussion lies. With that being understood, it is easy for all of us to say, as the United Front of Athletic Trainers, unfortunately, there is no panacea for concussions, meaning that there is no end-all solution. But we are here because there are interventions and steps that we can take to continue to monitor, track, and treat concussions and all athletic injuries effectively. This way we can provide interventions timed at the appropriate pace to go ahead and drive down the incidence of concussion and athletic injury across the board. Earlier this year, we came before the board to discuss our district's return to play protocol, which has been required to be in place by House Bill 2038, which was passed in 2012, Natasha's Law. Here in Ysleta ISD, we have a two-part return to play protocol. The first step in return to play protocol is first and foremost return to learn. Our biggest concern as athletic trainers is not that our athletes are on the field, it is that our athletes are cognitively functioning effectively in the classroom first. Because first of all, they are student athletes. Academia always comes before athletics in the grand scheme of schooling. So, as our return to play protocol states, the student must complete the return to learn protocol first, which means the student must be able to handle a full academic load of classes and homework without any exacerbation of symptoms or any symptoms arising. Once an athlete can complete the return to learn protocol, we can then move forward into the return to play protocol. Our return to play protocol is 5 steps of graduated exercise, resistance training, and sport-specific activity to ensure that the athlete is fully ready to return to play without any adverse effects from said concussion. With the implementation of the return to play protocol at our high schools and middle schools, this is one of our preliminary steps in being able to track concussions effectively, make sure that concussions are resolved completely prior to the return to play, and also making sure that our students are functioning at their top cognitive levels. This way their academics never slide. One of the methods that we can use in order to drive down the occurrence of concussion and more effectively treat concussion is through the use of data tracking systems. Currently in Ysleta ISD, we use Rank 1 Sport as our main means of athletic department administration and medical tracking. Rank 1 Sport is designed for athletic directors, athletic trainers, coaches, and parents in order to streamline documentation of medical records, documentation and administration of athletic clearance forms, and also streamlining communication between athletic trainers and coaches. We can all speak anecdotally from the fact that there are various athletic teams across all of our campuses, yet there's 2 athletic trainers. So we can use a tool like Rank 1 Sport that allows us to see an athlete in the training room, document instantaneously, and keep electronic communications with coaches and athletic staff. This way we can keep everyone involved in the injured athlete's loop so they know their participation status, they know where they stand in terms of progress, and they know whether or not they are ready to return to competition fully. But That being said, that is a small snapshot of what Rank 1 platform offers entirely. So, you all may be wondering what Rank 1 does. Rank 1 has several features. First and foremost, we have injury tracking. This is a tailor-made feature for athletic trainers. Under injury tracking, we can track daily treatment. How many times is our athlete coming in to see us during the day for treatment for said injury and/or concussion? Every time an athlete comes into the training room, it is logged and it is immediately sent to that respective coach and the athletic director, informing that the athlete is compliant with treatment protocols and regulations. We can also let coaches become aware of participation status. Say, for example, you have an athlete that comes in, they sprain their ankle, they can still participate, but they may be in a limited capacity. Using a tool like Rank 1 that allows us to send that information to a coach, this way we don't have to leave our training rooms, pause treatment for other student athletes, and go and find that coach. This takes a lot of those issues out of the loop for us. Also, this helps us to document things like medication, athlete allergies, injuries from the past, their current playing status, and also physical forms and district clearance forms on record. Because there is state statutes of limitations when it comes to medical record keeping, Rank 1 Sport does keep a backlog of 7 years of athlete injury information and medical documentation. This way we meet all standards for state statutes of limitations. And also this system is compliant with HIPAA and the electronic version of HIPAA, which is known as high tech. There is also extras built in to the Rank 1 system for coaches and other athletic staff. Rank 1 can be used to track scores, track scheduling of athletic events between all campuses, and also track equipment and can serve as a point of communication for parents who might have questions as far as where teams are playing, what time they're playing at, and where they will be. So this is a feature-rich platform, which we have already adopted in Ysleta, but we are now hoping to take the implementation of Rank 1 just purely from a data collection resource to a source that we can take our data from injury tracking and implement it to start providing interventions to start driving down incident of concussion and injury across the district. So, who has access to Rank 1? Our system administrators from our athletic office at the top, we have Mr. Phil Hatch. He serves as our system administrator for Rank 1. At every campus, both athletic trainers fall under the administrator level of access and one campus athletic coordinator. Our other users include our high school coaches, both head, assistant, and sub-varsities, and also our middle school coaches as well. At the middle school level, our middle school athletic coordinators, who are both one female and one male, are charged with the responsibility of collecting physicals, inputting physicals, and also maintaining injury information in the system with cooperation with the school nurse at that campus. So our access to Rank 1 is pretty much kept to only parties involved with athletic injury, which would be parents, coaches, nurses, athletic trainers, and athletic directors. As far as who trains the users of Rank 1, each campus athletic trainer is responsible for training their coaches within their campus and their feeder pattern. Our training for Rank 1 takes place during in-service at the beginning of the year when coaches are attending their meetings for RCP, concussion management, and also Rank 1 interface training as well. There will be one athletic trainer that is appointed annually to present to our administrators during leadership meeting. This way, administrators also understand that we are using a data tracking system to collect information on athletic injuries. This way, we can start to take our data and implement it usefully to create change. At this time, we'd like to go over some of our current practices versus our goals for future practice. As of right now, all 7 high schools in the Ysleta Independent School District have adopted the use of Rank 1. As far as the level of implementation of Rank 1 per campus to campus, it is varying. We have noticed that most coaches are on board when it comes to using Rank 1 as a communication tool and an injury tracking tool. The numbers have increased exponentially this year. Also, more and more parents are starting to use the online forms feature, which allows them to go online, fill out all compliance forms electronically, and have them sent to the athletic trainer. Where in the past, we know that things can get lost between home and school, this is something that eliminates that problem because parents can do it electronically online and submit it immediately to the athletic trainer. We feel that this practice is good because we are aware that Ysleta ISD in the future will be shifting to all online registration. So having all online registration along with all online athletic compliance forms seems to segue well together. Also, there were some issues with TIS as far as information sharing between Rank 1 system and TIS, but we have since conferenced with TIS to resolve said issues, and now we are able to access all student information in a safe manner. This way we can have emergency contact information in the event that we need to call a parent to talk to them about injury status or any other questions and concerns parents may have. And it also allows us to use Rank 1 to its full extent. As far as future practice goes, this is where our concern lies. I can speak from anecdotal evidence because I serve as the current vice president of the Sun City Athletic Trainers Association. Rank 1 is a system that is used across the city, but there is not a school district within this city that is attempting to take Rank 1 to the next level of implementation. The districts to the east and west of us have implemented it purely for data collection, but they are not taking the steps to implement the data that they collect, which is what we want to do in YISD, to go ahead and start to set the standard for student-athlete care, not only within our city, but across the region and the state. What this would require is all of our athletic campuses, all 7 high schools, using Rank 1 to its full extent. This would mean that we would have all parents shifting towards using the paperless option for physicals, and we would be able to overcome some of the limitations that have stood in our way from keeping current data from across all 7 of our campuses. Some of the limitations that we have run into currently with the implementation of Rank 1 is funding. Funding right now is at the campus level and not the district level, and also technological infrastructure. As far as issues that we have on campus, several of our field houses do not have Wi-Fi internet access in the athletic training room, and several of our computers throughout all our field houses aren't exactly in the best shape to handle the load of an information management system like this. We feel that if we were able to overcome some of these issues, our future practice would become much easier to achieve. So now we get to our recommendations for taking the implementation of Rank 1 to the next level. The first recommendation would be that we need to secure funding from the district level to ensure that this is a service that is offered equally across the board at all 7 of our comprehensive high schools. And all paid at one time. Once again, I did mention previously, I do serve in the City Association of Athletic Trainers, which works with athletic trainers from all districts. I can say that our rival school districts to the east and west have already secured funding from the district level. So this is something that we would like to seek. This way, all campuses have access to this service. The other thing would be to overcome some of the technological hitches that we have at the moment. Technology needed for effective implementation of Rank 1 would include Wi-Fi availability in our field houses, access to adequate scanning and computer technology. This way we can keep effective records, and also, if possible, the use of iPads for all of our athletic trainers to instantaneously track and enter information as it is happening in real time. One of the hangups that we have at times can be that we can see up to 40, 50 athletes in a training room at one time using paper and pen to write everything down and then having to backtrack and put all that in. Now, all of you as board members understand that there are varsity games, JV games, freshman games, several sports going on at one time. What we want to do is, for the sake of time, implement this technology to help reduce the amount of time we spend having to backtrack and do twice the work in record keeping. This way we can do it instantaneously on site and free our time up some more so we can serve our athletes better. Also, our goals overall would be to reduce the number of concussions, and not just concussions, but athletic injuries across the board, increase the standard of care within our school district when it comes to athletic injuries and concussions. And by doing this, we will set the example for athletic injury care and management, not only for the city of El Paso and the greater El Paso region, but across the state as well. Through the tracking and collection of data, we hope to find causes of injury and try and provide appropriate interventions. This way we can drive down the incident of injury before it ever happens. And finally, we would like to train all stakeholders, including coaches, administrators, parents, and fellow athletic trainers in a timely manner to make sure that everyone is using Rank 1 to its fullest extent. Prior to the presentation this evening, we as a board of athletic trainers collected our concussion numbers and data, and they were furnished to the board, correct? Okay, got it. At this time, we will field any questions and or concerns.
Any questions?
Yes. My first question is, you have on page 24, where you said that parents need to put information online.
Yes.
Okay. What is it that you're putting online? Because we try to keep our students' information.
Yes, and that was something that was previously stated. Rank 1 Sport is compliant with HIPAA and high-tech. HIPAA was the act that was in place to protect health information when it was kept in a paper format. High-tech is the new form of HIPAA that protects information pertaining to healthcare and healthcare administration when it comes to patient care. So Rank 1 Sport is already in compliance with HIPAA and high-tech. So it is an encrypted and protected network. And it is something that we have already been using for the past about 5 years. So it is something that is already compliant, and our student information is protected.
It's nothing that can be other people can get information from?
No.
It's basic information. It's our physical packet. Instead of filling it out on paper, it's done online, but the actual physical part that has the medical information is collected by paper still. We can't collect that electronically because that's the one the doctor signs off on. So it's just a basic, it's a concussion questionnaire, the cardiac statement, failure to warn, a steroid agreement. We're hoping to get the travel form, the release of liability. So it's nothing that really has personal private information. It's just parent signatures that show that they understand, there is risk in your son or daughter playing a sport. You agree they're not taking any steroids. You agree that they don't have a heart condition or previous concussion, anything like that, that would put them at risk. The part that does have all of the personal information on it, again, we collect that on a piece of paper and that gets filed in our training rooms. That's not kept online.
My other question is, what about those parents that don't know how to use the computer or don't read the English language?
We're currently working on getting our forms translated into Spanish as well. They will be put up it'll be put up on the district website as well as each of the campus websites. And when each of our campuses host physicals, we make them available for our student athletes to come and get physicals on our campuses, where we make arrangements to have computers available. so that we're there on site to show them exactly how to fill them out. Also, on the Rank 1 webpage, there's an instruction page. That's the first thing that comes up, and it gives you step-by-step directions on how to fill out each of the forms.
In case they don't have or can't do it, maybe the students can help them, but sometimes the
Yes.
students can't. But can you all help, or are you not?
Oh, yeah, we can help at any point. And we encourage the parents also, if they have a question about any of it, anytime, they can call us, they can email us, they can come into the training room and see us. We can walk them through it in the training room. They're more than welcome to come and ask us at any point.
So now, also my other question, I have two more. But on the iPads, are they very helpful for you that I know they are, because sometimes you're out in the field, you have to be
Yes.
going back and forth. I see the trainers for the Riverside. Sometimes they're on the, wish they had two little cars to go back and forth because they've got different fields occupied with different sports.
What helps us is, like a tablet in general is mobile. We don't have to walk around with a laptop in our hands. We can have an iPad right in our hand, and we can take it in the training room, on the campus, to any field. If they're Wi-Fi ready, we can take it. I can have my iPad on the sidelines at Riverside High School. If a kid of mine goes down after I do an evaluation, I can enter the data right there on the sidelines at Riverside High School. It's not limited to my own training room.
I know what you all are going through. I have seen the ones from Riverside, the trainers from Riverside. I have seen them with concussions there, where they're trying to help one and then have another one, and another sometimes have on another field.
Yes.
And they have students running back and forth, getting the sheets
Yeah.
for the parents to sign and everything.
Right.
So that's very inconvenient. I understand what you all are going through. That is very helpful.
It
But
would be.
now, my other question for concussion, and I'll be through board, but I have this other one on concussion.
Yes.
Is one of my concerns. With the football, now that we're getting the new artificial turf, we're going to have more injuries and more concussions. How are you going to be handling that?
This is part of our initiative. Through data tracking and management, we can start to narrow it down to mechanism of injury. What surface were they playing on? What environment were they in? And identifying these factors is going to be something that will help us provide an appropriately timed intervention to help drive down the occurrence of concussion. Ysleta already shows as a district that it is committed to the safety of athletes with all of the new implementations and improvements that are happening across our campuses. So yes, there are some studies that have shown that there may be an increase in injuries with the installation of turf, but that is not something that is concern of us, because we are already trying to take it in the direction to prevent before it even occurs by considering all the factors involved.
Now, have you all gotten in touch with your principals about having them fix the turfs whenever they're going to be practicing or anything like that, so they can avoid any injuries?
Could you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't understand what you're asking.
Could you clarify?
Because sometimes, the hard surface on the turfs, if they're not well maintained, they get hard. So that when you fall and you're playing on them, you get concussions, you get broken arms, broken sprains, or any sprains, or injuries to your knees, to your ankles.
I guess I would consider the best answer to that is it's an inherent risk. When you play a sport, it's an inherent risk that you're going to get injured. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And be it on turf, be it on grass, be it on a basketball court, be it on the tennis courts, a softball field, you're going to get hurt. That's part of the game. As far as limiting those injuries, a lot of that is coaching technique, having the proper equipment, having equipment that fits, having equipment that's not out of date, having fields that are well maintained. And I understand all of those things are budgetary concerns as well. But
Annika, let me jump in
Fortunately-
real quickly, but if
Okay.
you look at research, it's going to tell you with the type of turf we're installing is we're going to reduce the number of injuries because the playing surface is going to be more consistent. In the old days when they had AstroTurf, it was like playing on sidewalk. All right, and I think, Casey, you were at
Yes,
UTEP and
I
you
was at
could
UTEP
attest
for
to
6 years, and I can attest to the fact the advancements in playing surface technology have curtailed the amount of injury that results. Science has come a long way when it comes to playing surfaces. So yes, I understand the concern because that was a widespread concern in the mid-90s, early 2000s. But given the advancements in playing surface technology, it is something that has not become so much a concern. More so, it's something that's negligible because of the advancements that have been made. And I know that the district has gone ahead and hired one of the best artificial surface providers out there. I can attest that Hellas has provided artificial turf for various Division I universities, including all the athletic fields at the University of Texas at El Paso. So it's not necessarily an issue of, is this service going to cause more injuries? I can attest to it. I've worked as a Division I athletic trainer. The advancements will help as well in driving down the incident of injury.
Now, under your model, you will someday be able to compare the number of incidents locally. In other words, you'll collect statistics to determine whether or not there's been any significant increase or decrease in the number of injuries as a result of the Hellas artificial turf.
Exactly.
And ultimately, that is one of the things that's one of the goals we'd like to attain is not only now it's more, we're not just trying to track the data, we're going to use the data. We're going to use the data to the full extent that we can to see, okay, we have 10 concussions that are occurring. Well, what's going on during those practices or games that those concussions are occurring? And again, it's a given, they're going to happen. But what can we do to limit that? And it's the playing field, that is part of it, but there are so many other factors, and we are going to try to use our data that we have collected and then looking to future data to see, okay, now that we do have the new turf, or now that we have new basketball courts, we're going to see where the data takes us as far as, okay, we're going to see a decrease, or we're going to see an increase. Why are the numbers decreasing? Why are they increasing? And we can share the data, not only within our district, but across the city. So we can also say, hey, El Paso High School has a turf field, and they're getting 80 concussions per football season. And Del Valle has a turf field, and we're getting 40 concussions per season. What's the difference here? So we can share data and just across the city and ultimately the region and state say, hey, the practices at Del Valle or XYZ, that could be why we're limiting our concussions, whereas at El Paso High School, their practices are not XYZ and they're seeing an increase.
And that is why at the root of the matter here, we are trying to improve our means of data collection so we have a much more accurate snapshot and numbers to go off to provide those interventions at the right time.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Pearson, you had
I
a question?
appreciate your information and you bringing us back what you all need for all.
Thank you, Ms.
And Mr. Rosales, you're next.
This is something very dear to my heart. One of my closest friends, we grew up together, and unfortunately, tragically, he passed on because of concussions that he had. He went on to play at UTEP when we all got out of high school. And so it's something that's always been there. And now we're getting to the point where, technologically speaking, we can gather and find out and apparently make a strong effort to do things that will avoid the number of concussions and which will impact you into the future for every athlete. So my question to you in regards to the Wi-Fi and the computers and iPads, do you have a number that we need to consider as far as funding? Dr. La Torre, could you help us here?
A monetary number or like the number of
No,
equipment needed?
we're here to look at the whole spectrum, and it takes money to buy beer.
Right.
Yes.
So what's the bottom line here? Or have you done any?
Well, we've kind of toyed with the idea, if you will. Ideally, it would be great to have, 2 iPads per campus, a scanner, at least one scanner per campus.
Have you put a number to it yet?
No, but we can.
But we've been in communication.
Yeah.
We've been
Yes.
talking with the athletic trainers to identify those needs. For example, they said they needed more information from TIS. We got with Gloria Chavez. Problem solved. They talked about Wi-Fi's out at the training rooms that don't have it. Talked to Gloria today. We're going to take care of that. So we're working with the trainers, and we're going to get them what they need.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the impact, economically speaking, would be.
You will have that by Friday. We'll put it in the
wonderful.
Friday packet.
Mr. Pearson, you have questions?
I certainly do. I have a couple questions. Casey, when you're at UTEP, how does this system align with or match up to what UTEP used for doing the same thing?
This system is actually much more comprehensive than the system that
Really?
UTEP currently uses. Speaking from personal experience, Rank 1 is much more user-friendly in terms of input, tracking, and feature-rich options. This is a step ahead of what was in place when I was at the collegiate level. So that's why coming to this setting and having a resource like this that is so feature-rich, we're all eager to get the most and reap the most out of it because it is that far ahead.
Great. I know on some of the costs, I mean, if you're talking Apple as opposed to other tablets or even the computers that we buy our kids, those are very
It doesn't
inexpensive, too.
necessarily have to be an iPad.
Yeah, I know.
We just need a web-enabled.
But on the other hand, and you brought up a good point, Annika, about inputting on the field, there was a question, and I brought up this question about Wi-Fi on the football fields because they're being turfed because of being wired that way. I think it's a no-brainer now. Everyone should have because that's where we're going.
That would be awesome.
Yes, because then you can perform sideline evaluations on the iPad for concussion, balance testing, memory testing, and all that can have an audit trail back to our Rank 1 system.
Mr. Ramirez, you had a question?
Well, first off, good evening. Thank you all very much. I know you've been working hard on this, and I appreciate that. And just for the record, Ms. Leeper and Dr. De La Torre, I am not the spend and thrift guy this time around, but I support Ms. Rosales' question. I would thank you very much for taking care of our students. I know what a hard job that is, and the concern that you have for them, and dealing with athletes can be challenging at times because of their work ethic. And so I very much appreciate everything you do. Like Mr. Rosales, I would ask that you guys put a plan together working with Mr. Williams and the rest of your leadership teams at your campuses. Ms. Leeper's smiling at me because I'm messing up the budget here, but that's okay. The other thing too is that I would also ask you to kind of look forward to the future when you're doing these things involving your concussion committee. And then I think the board would like, I'm speaking as one board member, would also like to see some regular reports come back so we can look at those things. Because there's going to be a lot of questions. And quite honestly, I don't think there's a board member here who hasn't had a call or an email about the new turf and that sort of thing. And so I think that's going to be very interesting going forward, what occurs. And so I would ask that you're talking about the software being feature rich. I would ask that you take that opportunity to expand and grow that as quickly as possible. Let's not wait a year to get better. If you all see something happening, you all as a group, notify the leadership and let's change this and expand it so that we can better serve our students. And thank you for recognizing they're students first, and then they're athletes, and then but all of it's important in their development. And so, again, I thank you. I would also ask is that at some point when you all figure out how to merge all these things, all these types of, all this data and stuff with that you said local, regional, and state, and perhaps even national at some point, it'd be kind of interesting to see how we compare as far as those sort of things, what we need to do. The last thing I'd also asked for, you didn't ask for anything for yourself, though I did hear Ms. Duenas offer golf carts for you. I would also ask that you all look at what you're doing as well, because I know you're training students, trainers as well. And so I'd also ask for you to consider those things. And there's a lot of things going on out there in the world. And I know that you all you can do some medication administration, but kind of keep that in mind. And for those that need to do credentialing and other things like that, that's part of the solution too, in all of this. So please include that as part of the overall plan.
We will.
So, again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And we do have some data for you guys. That we did put together. If nobody has any more questions regarding this, we can briefly go through the data with y'all if you'd like.
Real quick, let's put it up on.
Yeah, if you can. It's after the questions. Yeah, there we go. So this is broken down, the concussions by school and then by gender. So the gray number is a total amount for that campus, and then the red number represents the females that sustained a concussion, and then the blue represents the males that sustained a concussion. Overall, at Bel Air, we had 51 concussions. At Del Valle, we showed 25. At Eastwood, 44. Hanks, 34. Parkland, 31. Riverside, 29. And Ysleta, 18, for a total of an estimated 232 concussions. That was for this past school year. Now, keep in mind, spring football is in full force right now, so that number will probably increase. Also, keep in mind that there may be some inconsistencies in this data due to some of the inconsistencies we've had in the past with rank 1 use. And so this, you know, we're going to move forward and we're going to get the most consistent data that we can from now on. This is a breakdown of concussions by sport. I'm sure big surprise to everybody, football has the most, right? Big surprise. And then you can see it's broken down here. We do have a few campuses that also have gymnastics, so keep that in mind as well. Your basics: baseball, basketball, cheerleading, football, girls basketball, girls soccer, girls swimming, girls wrestling, gymnastics, boys soccer, softball, swimming, tennis, girls track, volleyball, and wrestling. I forgot boys basketball.
We will note, for the sake of space, any athletic teams that didn't report any incident of concussion, and we had no concussions on record for that team, they were left off. Otherwise, you would have zeros for.
Right.
And the other sports that are low in incident of concussion, golf. So if anyone did not have any concussions on record for those sports, that's why they're not listed on the chart. These are the sports that did have.
And these confirmed concussions also are not just concussions that occurred in the sport. They're concussions, you know, we might have a girls basketball player that fell off her horse over the weekend. Because of the importance of dealing with concussions consistently, we make them go through the protocol. Even though it did not happen on a YISD campus or event, we put them through the protocol because we want to make sure that they're safe before we put them back on our fields or courts.
My question is, and we'd looked at the data before it, is there anything in line? You say not everybody reports. You know, that's not acceptable, basically. Well, I know you said you had TIS problems and everything else. So, but going forward, that won't be acceptable.
Correct.
That we need to have all these numbers,
Yes.
especially since, as Mr. Ramirez said, we'd talked about this before, comparing against the state on percentages, against nationally on percentages, how we are, and that kind of thing, because you mentioned it before. Why is it less at one school than another, so on and so forth? So that would be really good data.
We
But we
agree.
can only get it if everybody does it.
We agree.
Exactly.
To me, these numbers are great, but I think you need to bring us information that is as a percentage of the student population at that school, you know, as a percentage of, you know, the numbers, because it's, you kind of, you know, Ysleta High School has a lot fewer kids than Bel Air High School, you know, and so ultimately there's a lot less kids playing sports at one school versus another. So it's, you know, in order to get a good feel for what these numbers mean, I think we need to put it in context as far as the student population and the number of students that are playing the sport, right?
We already have that data
just wasn't
desegregated. We just, for the sake of space and time, chose to not include it. It can be furnished to you before the end of this evening, actually.
Okay, and that's great. I mean, because to me,
It
you know,
should be on this slide, but I don't know what happened.
Yes.
I can see it.
Yeah, it's
We
there.
already have the data broken down into those subsets.
you know, so, you know, I want to applaud all of you, first for being here and for your commitment to the kids and keeping them safe and getting them well. You all did a fantastic job of presenting. Thank you.
Thank you guys for giving us the
Thank you
opportunity.
for the listening here. We appreciate it.
And I'm glad that the other trustees did ask for the information as far as dollars, because I'm a dollars and numbers person. So I'd be interested to see how much, you know, that's going to cost, and hopefully we can get that done here soon. You know, the sooner the better. And also, I'd just like to applaud you for wanting to take those next steps to bring this information to where it doesn't just give you the information, but that you can use it to make things better, and especially make things better for the kids. So thank you.
We agree wholeheartedly.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Can you come back to us, make sure you got what you need? I know that sometimes when you have, like in the fall, when you have basketball, you got volleyball, you got football. There's 3 different areas you're gonna have to be working out of the fields. Would 2 iPads be enough? I think you need to go back to see who's gonna be in charge of every game, because we need to know what concussion, what kind of injury or anything that's coming in. So, and not wait until the other student runs and get the iPad from the other. It's like getting the paperwork back to the.
We say ideally 2, because that leaves us 1 per certified athletic trainer on campus, because a certified athletic trainer is going to be the one doing the exam. So to have more than 2, I mean, it would be fantastic to ask you guys for 10, but there's only 2 of us and we can only use 1 at a time.
Yes.
So to ask for more than 2, honestly, to me, just seems more money that needs to be spent, because there's only 2 of us
Do
that
any
can
of the
do the
coaches
exam.
use this information also?
They do,
Yes.
however, they're not the ones that do the exams. And so it's us that's inputting the data, and then they will receive an email with whatever information that we have found, and we enter into the treatment log, and they'll get an email on that with the information. But as far as that goes, I don't know a single coach that during the game is going to be checking their phone or iPad for an email. They're focused on the game. And so for us, it does make it a little easier for us. We can enter it on the sidelines right then and there, and then as soon as the game is over, a coach can go sit at their computer, at their desk, or on their phone and check an email as soon as the game is over and get an update.
Okay. Well, like I said, if you need more, let us
Okay.
know, because
will,
we
thank
need to
you.
know about this so that we
Right.
can get the information, get it in to us, and so that we can find out what's going on.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You guys want to press on, or did you want to take a quick break? Take a 5-minute break and be back at 6-minute break, be back at 7:15?
Do that, or he's hoarding them all for himself. Did you want Diet Pepsi? No, you guys don't like Diet Pepsi. Diet Coca. Oh, you're Diet. Things are changing. Bobby?
Mr. President, Dr. De La Torre, Board of Trustees, just like to take a few minutes and discuss our Teacher Evaluation and Support System Committee. We had a committee that convened, and it included multiple individuals. We had association representatives, teachers of the year, assistant principals, associate superintendents, all to come together so that we could collaborate and see what would be the best option for a teacher evaluation system for the upcoming school year. What you have in front of you is a rollout plan that the committee devised, and it's just so that we can have a prescriptive measure to base where we should be during the entire course of the 16-17 school year, beginning with our initial rollout. On April 13, 2016, the committee met, and what we did is we discussed the components of T-Test along with the components of PDAS, the negotiables versus non-negotiables based on Commissioner of Education guidelines, which were recently adopted for the upcoming year, and then what implementation details we thought would be important to ensure that whatever evaluation system we adopt would not only be student-centered, but would also be teacher-centered and open those lines of communication between administration and our educators. At the end of our first meeting, what the committee unanimously decided was that we would present the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System to the Board of Trustees for approval. So what we decided during that first initial meeting is that rather than only evaluating a third of our teachers, we would evaluate all of our teachers for the upcoming year. And one of the things that one of our principals stated was, when you coach a team, you don't only coach a third of the team, you coach the entire team. And what we're trying to get away from, leaving PDAS and going towards T-Test, is rather than seeing it as a punitive measure, we want to look at it more as a coaching measure so that we can coach our teachers up rather than coach them down. Each teacher is only going to receive one formal observation unless they request a second appraisal, which is definitely an option. And all teachers and administrators are going to go through each of the components, beginning with goal setting, the pre-conference, the post-conference, and the end-of-the-year conference. What we really want to do is open those lines of communication. So when our administrators get to know our teachers better and our teachers get to know our administrators better. And then, as we know, there will be no student growth measure implemented during the 16-17 school year. In fact, there currently is a lawsuit pending with the Texas court system that they're trying to remove the actual growth measure completely. What we also learned after our April 13th meeting is that we needed to have another meeting because there was so much awesome information that was coming forward. We felt like we needed to get together one more time so that we can devise a plan to see how we were going to roll out T-Test and the components and dynamics behind it. So what we did at our April 27th meeting is we developed a PLC timeline, and that was in your packets that went out. And what that timeline is where each campus is going to be on each of the different dimensions and domains of T-Test throughout that first year. The first year is crucial. So what we really want to do by the end of that first year is ensure that all of our teachers, all of our administrators are 100% fully versed in the T-Test system. So that way when we go into year two, everybody will be aware. What we are going to do is our committee is going to meet at the end of our first year to see where we went really well and where we really need to work on some items, so that way we can make it even better the second year upon approval by the board. I do have some of the members of the committee here with me. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Ms. Garcia, thank you for the presentation.
My pleasure, sir.
I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this, and I don't, and it doesn't have to do with our district. My wife teaches for another school district, who I won't name, but she just went through that in her district with that particular evaluation process.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as an outside observer, an interested observer, I was totally unpleased with, not pleased at all, with the entire process. It was handled poorly. The information was rolled out poorly. It was done poorly. They didn't follow their own procedures. They did everything wrong that you could possibly do wrong with this process. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is that this grading system that they have in place, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to standardize, the evaluation system, the process, and how you look at teachers. But What they've managed to do, at least in this one particular case, is take a very good teacher and take the wind out of her sail by comparing her to be as average as anybody else. You know, and she's one of those teachers that's the first one there in the morning, the last one to leave, does everything and anything for her students, puts herself out there every day, stays up late at night at home writing letters for scholarship applications, and all those other things that great teachers do, and they kind of beaten her down on it.
Right.
And so I would ask that when we go through this process, that we have a conscience about it. I guess that's the only way to say that we have a conscience about it. I know we have to do the work. You know, I know that's important. I know that we have great teachers, we have good teachers, and we have teachers that could use some help. But we just need to have a conscience about the process, and we need to work at all levels to be as fair about it as possible.
I have to say I agree with you 100%, and that's why we felt that the rollout plan was so crucial and that everybody needs to be at the same spot at the same time. The important part is it is very important to evaluate our teachers, but the most important thing is to make sure that the teachers understand the evaluation tool we're using, because too many times we put something in front of our teachers and we don't guide them and teach them what the process is about, and that's where our PLC plan goes into play. Also, during that first year, there isn't going to be negative employment action taken against anyone that is being evaluated, and we need to get away from the whole plan of using the evaluation system as a way to take punitive measure. During that first year, everybody is just going to learn the process, and that's what it's all about. Everybody is going to learn it. Everybody's going to be evaluated. Everybody's going to become aware of the system. That way, in year 2, we can start using it as the appraisal process needs to be. But year 1 is going to be a learning experience. And I assure you that everyone is going to participate in each of the components just so that we can make sure that the expectations are set beforehand, because it's not fair if you go into an observation and you don't even know what the expectation is. So that's why we really need to make sure that that does take place as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I had my questions online. Since we're not using this, I'm going to have to kind of freehand here.
Okay.
So I had noticed that there's the option of having scheduled versus surprise room evaluation or teacher evaluations.
Right.
What was the thought process behind only having scheduled observations?
Because we're still utilizing walkthroughs into the classroom. So you still get to see the classroom and the classroom teacher and the students interacting on the walkthrough basis. During the first year, we're scheduling the formal observations just so we can get a hold of it, first off. Secondly, every single teacher is going to be evaluated. So that's in about 3,500 to 4,000 teachers, quite possibly. So it's also to help the administrator in the scheduling process to make sure that they're laying out the timeline. And also so we move away from that punitive I gotcha piece of it and show that we're just there so that we can see the great things that are happening in the classroom.
Right, and I understand what you're saying as far as the punitive, we don't
Right.
want to have that type of situation. But through the years that I've been here, we've had several teachers go through the grievance process that has come to the board who have had reams of documentation of their poor performance. And even then, it was almost impossible to remove them from the classroom because, my concern is for the student. Those teachers are impacting at least 20 students a year. The high school teachers are impacting over 100, right? And so you leave them in the classroom to observe them, to get this new performance evaluation tool in process, and you are hurting anywhere between 20 to 100 students for that one teacher. And so, although I understand we don't want that type of environment, I'm concerned with this. We're not going to have any type of punitive actions because I don't want to penalize teachers, but I do want to not have teachers that are not educating our students out of the classroom. So where is that balance?
Now, when I say there's not going to be punitive action, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a documentation process. The evaluation system will simply be used as a coaching tool and a goal-setting tool to ensure that teachers are rising to the level of expectation based on on the state's expectations of teachers. The documentation process will be another process, and what we utilize now is coaching for excellence. And it's a documentation process. It's a progressive process where we start with, a verbal warning, written warning. We move forward that way. Also, we have our memo writing that coincides with it with due process. And that's the piece of documentation that's going to assist us in the event that we have a teacher in the classroom that is poor performing or is not good for kids.
Basically, what you're saying is this next year, all of those poor teachers, they're going to stay in the classroom.
No, not necessarily. If a teacher does something egregious or something that is detrimental to kids.
It has to be off the wall. You have to be slamming a child, across the room in order for that to happen. But there's a lot of teachers that don't take those drastic measures, and hopefully none will. But, again, I'm concerned for the students. Because this is a system, it appears to me, that's very protective of the teacher, which is fine, but where's the balance in protecting the students? I'm not seeing it here.
And there is still going to be that balance. What we're trying, and I reiterate it, and I don't mean any disrespect, we're trying to balance it with the teacher evaluation system being used to evaluate teachers and their performance. And then we have our documentation process that's going to document that poor performance. So what used to be is with PDAS was used as a documentation tool. That's all it became at the end. With T-TEST, it's going to be used as a coaching form, whereas our documentation tool is going to be more of the written documentation that will coincide. If there's a walkthrough in the classroom that the teacher's not performing correctly, there will still be that form of documentation. It's just not going to be tied directly to T-TEST until we get to the end of the year summative conference. Does that clear it up or muddy it a little bit more?
Well, I'm still not seeing where the child or where the student is being the primary focus of this whole process.
One of the
where the
things-
teachers and making sure that the teacher is, I guess, not harshly evaluated is going to be an outcome here. But I'm still not comfortable that we're focusing in on the students getting the proper education, and that the teachers that shouldn't be in the classroom are removed from the classroom.
So let me try to explain it. To your point, and I think you're absolutely right, and that is that in the 30 years that I've been in education, I've never been part of a process where an annual evaluation has resulted in the termination of a teacher. That just simply will not happen. We don't rely on the formative evaluation, the summative evaluation. It's a postmortem autopsy. Everything that happened has happened. What we've introduced in this district and in my former neighboring school district is a system based on instructional rounds, and that is frequent, vigilant presence in classrooms at schools that capture not so much what the teacher is doing, but how the students are reacting to what the teacher is doing. And when there's evidence to suggest or artifacts to suggest that there is no evidence of outcomes or learning, in other words, when there's nothing to support that the student was any better off coming to class that day than staying home, then it becomes part of a progressive attempt to help a teacher improve in their craft. And that's how you develop the long, voluminous process that does ultimately result in one of two things. One, the teacher feeling like they either are unwilling or incapable of getting better and leave the profession, or the teacher improving and remain in the profession, or the teacher simply deciding that the standard in this particular school district is too high and going out and finding employment in a neighboring school district. But that's a very separate and distinct process from a state-required performance appraisal. And this is a state-required performance appraisal that's being introduced with the inclusive participation of teachers, administrators, the association, and others to pilot, but it does not prevent the district and our instructional leaders from doing instructional rounds on a consistent and regular basis at their school in an effort to improve teacher effectiveness and teacher performance. And when that doesn't happen, then there is a certain degree of pressure that I think teachers feel. But by and large, most teachers go in and give you 110%. They're a lot like students. A lot of them are very, very high flyers. Most of them are sound, strong, and then you have a very small percent of teachers that are ineffective, and we'll continue to be vigilant in making sure that we put an effective teacher in front of all students, separate and apart from what Ms. Russell is presenting tonight.
Doctor, you mentioned the teacher associations. Are they involved in this process? Are they working with you guys?
Yes, sir. We had representatives from the Ysleta Teachers Association and ATPE as well.
What was their take on this, or is?
And I know we have members here in the group, but they were, at the end of the initial meeting, both associations were in agreement with the criteria that we set forth.
Any comment? Mr. Hagerty?
Yes, sir.
Just for the information for the board, the evaluation process changes every 5 or 6 years. There's wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth, and we go on and adjust to it. It's all scary and so on and so forth, and it'll all be great in a year or so. So just letting you know that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Yes,
Mr. Haggerty, I was wondering if we might ask a representative from the YTA to come and give their take on this evaluation system.
Good evening. Yes, I was part of the committee that made up what we were going to do with the test. I think you're misinterpreting this evaluation as being simpler. It's not. It's very complicated. If you heard Mr. Ramirez, our district, our neighbor, is not doing too well with the evaluation system. But Ysleta I have really high hopes for it. We worked really hard. The teachers aren't scared of it. The name for it is the PDAS on steroids. So you can see where teachers might not be very happy with this new system. The Commissioner of Education has adopted this. We're going to all have to deal with it. The board, basically, if you don't agree with this evaluation, this would have to be done completely over, and we would have to start from scratch. And we need to just go ahead and deal with what we have. The district is doing a very good job at including everybody. It wasn't just the Ysleta Teachers Association. It was Teachers of the Year. It was administrators. It was the all high levels of the district. And I believe that we all put our best foot forward. We all agreed on everything. Someone mentioned, why are we having them, give them the courtesy of deciding when the evaluation is going to be? Why not? This is their time to shine. This is what I mentioned to the committee. There's one time every year that a teacher should be able to dress her best. Just like going to Sunday school, you dress up and you do a show. Let them see how good you are. There's nothing wrong with letting teachers show their stuff. They can do that. But what's really going to make sure that you know what they're doing are the walkthroughs. There is nothing that tells anyone when they're going to get a walkthrough. That shows exactly what's happening in that classroom. Dr. De La Torre talked about instructional rounds. That's happening constantly. These teachers will be monitored through walkthroughs, instructional rounds, and then, oh my God, they're gonna get to schedule their evaluation. Give them one time where they can actually say, hey, I'm getting evaluated today. I'm gonna do this. Let them get excited about it and let them do their best. It has nothing to do with if you're a good teacher or not. And I think that's the wrong way to look at this. It's gonna be a tough evaluation. It's not an easy evaluation. Everyone says that you're gonna be proficient. They said that with PDAS. Well, I looked at the instrument, and that's exactly, a good teacher's going to be proficient. But then again, there are ways to get to the top. And if this district does it the way that we plan on it, I think we'll be doing really, really well. So I think that we need to give our teachers the best instrument, the best way that we know that will help them show that they're good teachers. It will also show whether you're a bad teacher too. With all the walkthroughs, with all the instructional rounds, you're going to be able to do that. But please don't think negatively of our educators. They are good people. I don't know when we became the enemy, but we're good people. And I think Ysleta has the best teachers in the state. So I hope that that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
You know, I've been to Walmart and Home Depot whenever they know they're getting their managers and their higher-ups coming in, and you can see such a big difference in the way everybody's moving, everybody's on task, everybody's asking you if you need help. And me as a customer, I can tell when that's about to happen, you know? And so, you know, if I was evaluating somebody and not to say that I am a teacher, or have been a teacher, or know what happens in the classroom, right? To me, it would make sense as an outsider to evaluate somebody without them knowing that, you know, if I had a business, I would do evaluations whenever they least thought that I was gonna go in. So, you know, and I don't have a problem necessarily with this system or the PDAS or anything else because, you know, I don't know which one's better and which one's not. I think my concern was one with the decision of Ysleta they're making that decision to only have these scheduled evaluations. And two, that not having that component of student performance be part of that evaluation. I mean, those are two that could have been in there, but you've chosen a different route. And so those were my problems with this thing that we're looking at today.
Actually, the state of Texas has removed the student growth measure for the upcoming year. They've asked us not to use it. However, during the 17-18 school year, the 17-18 school year, as the law stands right now prior to the new legislative session, it will have to be implemented during 17-18, but the state has asked us to remove it during 16-17.
And I want to say that I don't consider teachers the enemy. I never have. My children both had very good teachers,
Right.
but both had several very bad teachers also. So, you know, I know this will be all turned around and spun some other way, but I know that the majority of the teachers are good teachers. My concern is with the student and making sure that the teachers that shouldn't be in the classroom are removed.
And I assure you, there'll be a substantial amount of walkthroughs that take place, as well as our instructional rounds, which will definitely get that picture outside of the formally scheduled observation. And I know this year, I think there was every teacher was getting 1 to 2 per week or something of that nature. And so there is a substantial amount that do occur to show that picture of what's happening outside of the formal evaluation process.
Mr. Rosales, you had a question?
Thank you, Bobby. I think if we have done our due diligence, and it appears that we have, this is something we're going to have to do. And like Mr. Ramirez just made the comment, what was done in the other district, we don't do things that way. And it would be my hope that we are above and beyond and have looked and have analyzed things. The opportunities that I've had to be out in the schools, I'm amazed with the tremendous amount of professionalism of our teachers. And I can understand that there's going to be one or two, but when I go into those schools, my gosh, are they professional? They're dedicated. Thank you. Would the rest of you applaud me? But the point here is the fact that we have a tremendous amount of commitment from our teachers, and that's why we're here, to make sure that they get a fair shake. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Ramirez brought those points up, because realistically speaking, sometimes people tend to make mistakes. They get a system and they don't proofread it, if you will. And I'm very hopeful that we've already been there, so that if we have kinks, we can work those things out. Okay.
Just on a side note, Region 19 has actually asked us to sit on their committee for the region, because we are one step ahead of everyone else in adopting the T-test and having our policy up for board approval.
Thank you.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes, I'd like to say something too, because I am a teacher. It is in a private school, and I've been through evaluation at my school. They evaluate us every year. We have the formal, but then the one, and that's, to me, the main component. The formal is the formal. The main component is those walkthroughs. You never know when they're going to come. You are not prepared for that. You have to be on task at all times for a walkthrough to happen, and for you to come out of that showing that you're performing your job at the best to your ability. So, and also, what I want to say too is that I'm glad we're taking that punitive, okay, well, you've messed up on your formal evaluation or on whatever, and so now we're just going to take you down and fire you. How does that help the kids in the classroom even? They need a teacher who feels comfortable to get evaluated, and somebody come to them and say, okay, you did great here, here, and here, but look, help us by working on this aspect of your job. And when they're approached that way, I believe Dr. Delatorre's right. Most people will respond to that and rise to that level. And then you have kids who are getting what they need in the classroom. So to me, the main component of this is the walkthroughs. That's the main part of it. The formal evaluation is just the grand finale at the end of a whole year of hard work. So I see this as a great opportunity for Ysleta to work with teachers who aren't as strong, without putting them in a position where they're fearful and that they're worried. I mean, who knows what potential you can pull out of those people. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Garcia, has this been already implemented, or is just going to get started?
Upon board approval, we'll get started with it during the 16-17 school year, so next school year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Just before we finish or go on to the next one, if we log into our web portals, we should be able to access any notes that we made in the board book, right? Just in case you had your questions and stuff on the online. That's where we're ready for the internal audit.
Ms. Champagne is here with us this evening, and she's prepared to be responsive to any questions you may have surrounding her internal audit.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
And this question is... Haggerty and everybody.
I'm sorry, Champagne, I apologize for interrupting.
Oh,
I do have a question on the Ysleta Community Learning Center audit, but it was directed towards Dr. Delatorre. Just a couple of things, sir. I noticed that they have monthly meetings, and but they don't generate any type of minutes. They don't do any. Do they provide any feedback to you, the committee itself?
Very little. Champagne and I talked a little bit about the dynamics of that consortium. And what it is it's a consortium that includes the Socorro Independent School District, the Ysleta Independent School District, and the El Paso Independent School District. And for the purpose of this grant to support adult education centers, the Socorro Independent School District is the lead. And so they coordinate the meetings, they determine time, location. We are the fiscal agent. And so the money comes through our entity and we distribute the money, but we've noticed a more aggressive tone from the Socorro Independent School District relative to the direction that the consortium is headed. And El Paso is responsible for the professional development and training side of that grant. And so I plan to attend the next meeting because although Socorro ISD is identified as the lead, we really all should have equal and shared interest in the direction that this consortium is headed. But because of the retirement of Mr. Anaya recently and our reliance on an interim, right, I believe that it presented an opportunity for the good people in the Socorro Independent School District to assume a greater presence or attempt to assume a greater presence or leadership role in the direction that that consortium is headed. So I'm going to go to the meeting and redirect that back to where it should be.
Thank you, and that was kind of my next question, and you answered that. I think the other part of this is that a couple of the associates took me when we were doing the tour of the feeder pattern. We stopped by there, and we heard some great stories. You met some wonderful students and some great staff. I guess, this is one of those things we talked about, perhaps a workshop sometime in the future on the audit reports, is that talking about successes. This is one of those programs that we don't always get a chance to see how we measure success. Are we, as Ms. Leeper talked about earlier, are we, we getting the value for our dollar that we invest in this? And so I think that's one of those things that perhaps sometime in the future we could kind of address that as well, too.
We'll take care of it. In fact, it's about time for a presentation surrounding that program. The reason we haven't had it before the board is because of the interim. But we're about to make an announcement relative to leadership at YCLC for 16-17.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Champagne.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, President Haggerty, with us is Mr. Mario Rodriguez, should there be any questions relative to his maintenance report.
No questions?
Thank you.
Anybody feel like they need a break, or can we?
Let's roll.
Let's review the May 11th agenda as listed in the posted notice of the regular meeting. If anyone has any questions on the consent agenda or recognitions and introductions for that matter, please let me know so we can pull them for individual discussion. Consent item number 1, approve YSD contract 20160354 shared services agreement with Region 19 for Title 1C migrant program during the period of July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017 at no cost to the district, and delegate to the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate any sign any resultant agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreed by both parties, not to exceed 120 days. Is there questions? Number 2, approve YSD contract 2016-0368 with the College Board to provide College Board exams, products, and services related to the college readiness system, and provide 1 PSAT for each 2016-17 8th, 10th, and 11th grade student during the period of July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017 in the amount of $158,748 from local funds. Board of Trustees delegates to the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resultant agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreeable by both parties, not to exceed 120 days as applicable.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, it mentions in it the con agency. Who is that?
Can you hear me? Thank you. Khan Academy is just it's a program that's available to our students free of charge, and they have online services such as downloadable tests. They can take resources, pull them down, and so that is free of charge for our students through the ACT program. It's aligned.
So they know about this when they get involved in taking that
That's
test?
correct. That's a free resource that we can easily leverage within, utilize it for our students so that they have access to it. They also have a downloadable app in which it grades their assessments. They can download an assessment, take a practice exam, and then there's an app that will grade it. And so that's all free of charge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have one more question. You have a list of schools that are here, 2 different groups. Are they both different? The groups of schools you have on page, I believe it's page 46 and 49.
Which one are we looking at, ma'am?
Page 46 and 49.
The backup sheet that I have just states that we're going to test all 10th graders and PSAT, 8th grade, and SAT, 11th grade, but that's for all students.
Okay.
It's in the comprehensive board binder, and what it is, Ms. Duenas, is a list of all middle schools where the PSAT will be administered, where the assessment will be administered, and then the other table may identify all of the high schools where the SAT will be administered just as a matter of record.
Right.
And the idea behind that, Ms. Duenas, is just to have better alignment and predictive scores. So now we have a snapshot in 8th grade, taking it over to 10th grade, and have a more predictive correlation to SAT in 11th grade.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just for the board's information, this is the new PSAT, and what the new PSAT does is it allows the new SAT, it allows the PSAT to provide a predictive score of how that student is likely to do on the SAT several years later, so that if it isn't a strong performance, we have an opportunity to intervene on behalf of the student and try to improve that performance because of that early indicator.
Can I,
Yes, ma'am.
how would that be done? What you just said, that they would be able to take that information and help the student?
So what they would do is if there's a student that takes the PSAT and the student performs poorly, then we typically tier students as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 students. Your Tier 1 students appear to, according to the PSAT, be prepared to perform well at the next SAT level. The Tier 2 students could benefit from some of the resources that I think Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Basurto were sharing in terms of a prep course, online practice tests. Our schools also offer real-time and live remedial or preparation courses. And then we'd want to reach out to the parents to make sure that they're aware that the current performance of their student may result in marginal performance on the SAT without the benefit of these resources. And so maybe they'll get more involved in the registration of their students in terms of the classes that they're taking, in terms of the preparation programs that they have available to them, rather than just use hope as a strategy that things improve over the next 4 or 5 year period.
Would there be a way to track those kids, the Tier 2, Tier 3 kids, and see if, whenever they did take the test again, were those measures to help those children, were they successful, or did they have any impact?
That's correct. And in fact, you're able to pull down individualized results almost like an IEP, individualized plan based on the PSAT. So in 8th grade, you'll be able to look in particular areas to really target and hone in for growth. Right now, presently, we do not have a multiple sets of data sets to monitor that growth. Right now, we just test them in 10th grade, and then it goes straight into 11th. And so that is our hope and our strategic thinking, that we want to offer it in 8th grade, identify through their IEP, offer some remediation to Khan Academy or our college readiness courses or through our English teachers, and increase that in 10th grade. The other thing that we found is that, for example, in this year's results in PSAT, the cut score is at 1070, which means that if a child scores at that particular level, they don't have to take the TSI to take dual credit courses. So there are multiple ways to use this information for our students and give them access into more rigorous courses.
And the reason I ask about these measures having measurable
Predictive value.
data
Prediction.
is because we, here this district, at least for the last 5 years, has been making has made a concerted effort to try to improve the number of students, or get those numbers up as far as the those students that score well, right? And as far as I can tell, that has not happened. So this will be a good way to maybe hopefully be able to impact the kids when there's still time.
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, on that notion, we've been working with our College Readiness Committee. We've met multiple times in the course of 2 or 3 months, and we're still continuing on to complete this by the mid-May to end of May. Our work, one of the things that we have found in looking at data sets, because you're right, it's not at the end of the year of 10th grade where you just take one assessment piece and assume that kids are going to be college ready. It's got to start from K-12. So we started looking back, and one of the things that we started looking into is utilizing our STAR assessments and seeing predictability that leads into PSAT. Through work with AREA, we found that by looking at 8th grade reading, final indicator level 2, that children who perform at that level as 8th graders are 4 times more likely to reach that 1070 PSAT standard. So we're looking at those links to see what else can we leverage to use measuring sticks along the way to predict PSAT performance that's considered college ready, which is this year's number was 1070 was the cut rate in PSAT. So that's the work that we're looking into to see what indicators we can use down the line to give us prediction towards success.
I have a question. Do you just have certain students that can get this testing or be in the program? Because I know on the some of our levels are on the reading is a little low. Can we get something to bring them up, or?
Yes, ma'am. So these assessments, in this particular contract, it's for all 8th graders. That's the 8th PSAT. It's for all 10th graders in 10th grade for the PSAT, and for all 11th graders in SAT. So this is for access for all kids.
Good.
So we have information to give us leverage points in which we can help kids.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. Consent item number 3, approve ISD contract 2016-0369 to include addendum number 1 with Communities in Schools El Paso, Inc. Provide social services and other supplemental support to students during the period of July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017 in the amount of $542,500 from various district funds. The Board of Trustees delegates the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resultant agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonable similar terms and conditions if mutually agreeable by both parties, not to exceed 120 days as applicable. Number 4, approve award of YSD solicitation 216036 RFP State Property Value Appeal Services during the period of June 1st, 2016 to May 31st, 2017 with a possibility of 3 one-year extensions for $250,000 from district funds. The Board of Trustees delegates the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resultant agreement, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreeable by both parties, not to exceed 120 days.
I have a question about that one. I noticed that there was only one respondent for this particular thing. Is that a good thing? Or it seems like that we should have had more interest in that.
Yes, ma'am. This is a unique solicitation. There are not a lot of firms that do this, and the firm that responded is the one that has historically worked with the district. So on this type of solicitation, I don't think it's unusual to have one.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just have a question. Ms. Woodruff just answered the question. My first question was how many bidders, but I see that it's only one. But why an out of town? We don't have any local?
If there are local firms that provide the service, they did not respond to the solicitation.
How long was the bid out there for?
Most all of our bids are out there for at least, they're advertised twice, and they're out for 2 weeks.
How much?
It was out for 1 week, 3 weeks between the first advertisement and board award.
1 or 2 weeks? I'm sorry, can you come in? I can't hear you.
It was out from March 24th to April 5th.
March 24th?
Yes, ma'am, to April 5th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Number 5, approve award of YSD solicitation 216038 RFQ Energy Savings Performance Contract Project during the period of date of contract award through August 31st, 2016. If the district recommends to move forth with the project, the Energy Services Company, ESCO, will provide the Utility Assessment Report, UAR, at no cost. If the recommendation is not to proceed, then the ESCO may charge a fee for their services in an amount not to exceed $120,000. Assessed fees will be contingent upon the third-party engineer review and approval from local funds. Contingent upon final negotiations and legal counsel review, the Board of Trustees delegates to the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resultant agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreeable by both parties, not to exceed 120 days as applicable. I have some questions on this one. My first question was, in line with, I think it was Mr. Ramirez, you asked the question about the $120,000? Someone, Mr. Pearson, sorry. So that led me to think, okay, then what do the other guys charge? But then when I go to the backup sheet, there is zero information other than vendor number, and the guys that we selected aren't even a vendor. So how did we come around to picking these guys? What were the other guys' proposals? And is that 120,000? Is that something typical? Is there, they don't give us a, hey, this is about the amount of money that we're going to save you, which is what I think Mr. Pearson was asking, before we even get in there and say, yes, we're going to commit to you guys, and if we don't, we're going to give you guys $120,000 for
Other way around.
letting us know.
The other way around. So the reason that you don't have a figure for the other two is because the figure isn't negotiated until after you select the firm. So the firm was selected based on other criteria besides cost. Then we negotiate what amounts to about 90 days worth of analysis and assessment of all of our schools. And then they come back to us and they say, we think we can save you approximately $28 million by installing our systems, our lighting, our roofing, our HVAC. And if we find that their savings are nominal or not what we were hoping for, then we simply have to pay for that 90-day analysis. And even at that point, they're not guaranteed the second stage of the work. We can always go back out and consider another company for the second stage of the work. So the only thing we're asking the board for this week is your permission to allow us to enter into this preliminary phase so that they can go out and begin to assess all of our facilities over the next 90 days. then we'll get that information back in front of you before we move forward at that point.
Again, I guess it's my understanding that it's typical for the preliminary to not cost anything. They give you a ballpark. And then from there, you move on to the second phase, which is the more comprehensive, where they go in there for 90 days. Say, this is about how much we're going to save you. And that, again, is where they earn their $120,000. But before that, not knowing what it is we're looking at, I don't see where it's.
And that would be true of this situation. If we went forward with the comprehensive program, then that $120,000 would be waived, and it simply would become part of the contract or part of the loan that we would receive to purchase all of the systems and all of the equipment that would then allow us to carve that out of the bond proceeds and be able to move from a like-for-like system to an evaporative cooling system across the district if it yields enough savings.
Thank you. Any further questions? Can we pull this one?
Yes.
Thank you. Number 6, approval order of additional list of vendors for the supplier base of YSC solicitation 216033 RFP and 216040 RFP, field design, percussion, and music, part 2 and 3, during the period of June 1st, 2016 to May 31st, 2017, with the possibility of 5 one-year extensions for $100,000, which includes original part 1 from various district funds, contingent upon Form 1295 Certificate of Interested Parties. The Board of Trustees delegates to the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resultant agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreed by both parties, not to exceed 120 days. Questions? Number 7, approve award of additional list of vendors for supplier base for YSD solicitation 216032 CSP, instructional materials, part 7, during the period of June 1st, 2016 to May 31st, 2017 for $7 million, which includes original parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 from various district funds, contingent upon Form 1295 Certificate of Interested Parties. Board of Trustees delegates to the superintendent designee the authority to negotiate and sign any resulting agreements, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreeable by both parties, not to exceed 120 days. Number 8, approve ISD contract 20160370 with the University of Texas at Austin to provide curriculum, license, and ongoing teacher support during the period of May 15th, 2015 through August 31st, 2019 in the amount of $9,000 from local funds and contingent upon legal counsel review and approval of the contract. Board of Trustees delegates to the superintendent or designee the authority to negotiate, sign any resulting agreement, contracts, and the authority to extend this contract on the same or reasonably similar terms and conditions if mutually agreed upon by both parties, not to exceed 120 days as applicable. Number 9, approve budget amendments. That was easy. Number 10, approve financial statements as identified in separate index, including quarterly investment reports as of March 31st, 2016. Number 11, approve the submission of Texas Education Agency 2016-17 Texas After School Centers on Educational 21st Century Community Learning Centers Grant Cycle 8, Year 4, with the project period of August 1st, 2016 through July 31st, 2017, for approximately $1.5 million, accepting such funds and authorizing the superintendent or designee to sign any subsequent documents in connection with the application, acceptance, and administration of such funds, including grant amendments.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I have spoken to you about this program, Dr. De La Torre, on cutting off some, and I believe some of the schools, and you were going to give me back the list that are going to be on the program?
Yes, ma'am. It is Cedar Grove, and who was the second school? Constance Holbert. We're part of Cycle 7. Cycle 7 expires on June 30th, and we, over the last, I believe, 5-year period, have benefited from almost $8 million for that program.
So it's not going to be renewed, or?
No, it's not going to be renewed.
Now, what's going to happen to the programs there, since we have a full capacity at Cedar Grove and Constance Hubert?
Actually, the program at times was having challenge getting enough students to participate after school. And so the program was in jeopardy of being non-compliant. So we don't certainly have $8 million to invest in the after-school program at 2 elementary schools. And so our recommendation would be that the school leadership, the administration, if they'd like an after-school program, they'd have to invest their own budget to make it happen.
Number 12, approve the submission of Texas Education Agency 2016-17 Carl D. Perkins Career and Technology Education Act grant application with a project period of approximately July 1st, 2016, August 15th, 2017, for approximately $603,329, accepting such funds and authorizing the superintendent or designee to sign any subsequent documents in connection with application, acceptance, and administration of such funds, including grant amendments. Number 13, authorize the Davis-Bacon, yes, ma'am.
I have a question. There's not a backup sheet on this?
The only backup sheet that I could consider would be the actual grant application. We're just asking the board for permission to submit the grant. That would cover us from July 1st, 2016 through August 15 of 2017 to try and secure the $603,000 and then accept those funds and continue to support those programs that funding supports.
That's correct. Good evening. The grant hasn't even been released yet. We're coming to you ahead of time because it usually comes out mid-May. So it hasn't even been released yet.
So it's a new grant?
Yes, ma'am. It's a grant that we apply for every year.
And what kind of a grant? Is it for the district-wide or?
Is it for, excuse me?
District-wide?
Yes, ma'am.
Or just certain schools?
Ms. Keaton will answer that.
The Carl Perkins Grant is a grant for high schools, and we do fund a little bit of money for the 7th and 8th grade. So if you're looking for a grade range, it's 7th grade through 12th grade.
But is this district-wide or just?
Yes, district-wide. It's all campuses that are in that grade level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 13, authorize the Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wage rates for each craft or type of worker for building construction trades in the call for bids for any public works contract and in the contract itself. Number 14, adopt a Texas teacher evaluation and support system as the evaluation system for teachers in YISD effective July 1st, 2016. On to action items. Through YSD Cooperative Requisition 33540 Quality Hardwood Floors, Inc. for the purchase of gym floors in the amount of $133,205 through Purchasing Cooperative from bond funds. Number 2, approve award of YSD solicitation bond 04 RFQ BP 13 Eastwood High School addition and renovations for $25,000 for pre-construction services and 3.5% of cost of construction from bond funds contingent upon final negotiation and legal counsel review with final contracts, including guaranteed maximum price and estimated cost of construction presented at subsequent board meeting.
I have a question about that one. I noticed in the backup sheet that the local general contractors were eliminated at the first meeting. And since this is one of our biggest projects, I was wondering if there was a reason for that other than they're maybe not being able to handle that kind of a job. Is that?
Yes, ma'am. This is probably the most complex and comprehensive job that any general contractor has attempted in the area. So we looked at the size of the company, the experience that the company has with staging, because they have to be able to do it with students in the building. We looked at their financial resources to make sure it isn't a situation where 2/3 of the way into the project they go bankrupt, and we arrived at the conclusion that there were really only 2 to consider, and then we had both of them come in and make a presentation to the committee, and then based on that presentation and knowing that we've got combination school down the road and several other smaller projects, including Bel Air Middle School and Thomas Manor, we felt like this company is in the best position to deliver what we need at Eastwood High School.
Thank you.
I remember right when we were talking about originally going out for the bond, wasn't it, if that was the case that we're at now where there isn't any local firm that's able to do it, weren't we looking at pairing them up with a firm that was able so they could get the experience? So going forward in the future, if another huge contractor, whether it was here or somewhere else, they had that experience?
That can happen with architects and professional services. Typically, general contractors don't team up because there's a lot of gray area relative to who has final authority relative to construction. But we do still have several local contractors that we can select from. It's just that, and this contractor has been here locally, I believe, for 14 years. And so, and given the experience at East Lake High School and Pebble Hills High School and the outcome at those two schools, we feel like they may very well be one of the best builders of educational facilities in the entire state. But no, there will certainly be other local contractors to consider for some of the more common projects down the road.
So this contractor will be the one doing Eastwood, Bel Air, and Thomas Manor?
No, just one.
Just one?
Just Eastwood.
Just the
Yes.
Eastwood?
There are a pool of other local contractors that will be considered for Thomas Manor, Bel Air Middle School, and the Del Valle Combination School. And I suspect that there even may be some not local contractors pursuing those positions, but we've told the public all along that we'd like it on time, under budget, great quality, and all things being equal, local.
No other questions?
I just think that that third point you made is the sticking point for me, all things being equal, making sure that we get the best that we can for the projects that we're undertaking.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 3, approve and document the proposed project budgets for projects authorized under the 2015 bond program for the construction, renovation, demolition, acquisition, and equipment of school buildings in the district and the purchase of necessary sites for school buildings.
I have a question. What schools are going to be demolished?
Are going to get demolished? We're going to demolish Thomas Manor. We're going to demolish the TLCC building to construct Bel Air Middle School. We're going to demolish Eastwood High School, or at least 90% of Eastwood High School. There will be demolition at Parkland Middle School in order to remodernize that facility. There will be minor demolition at, what am I missing? Bel Air, Thomas Manor, Parkland,
Can we
Eastwood,
have a list of that?
in the Del Valle Combination School.
Can we have a list of that?
Sure.
Number 4, approve the 2015-16 board operating procedures. 5, approve all YSD campus principals and assistant principals to serve as TTESS evaluators, second appraisers for the district. Number 6, approve YSD cooperative requisition with Hellas Construction Incorporated for the demolition and reconstruction of 8 post-tension tennis courts at Hanks High School, and to approve the reallocation of the remaining 2004 funds and interest in the amount of $546,198 and the reallocation of remaining IFA 2000 bond funds in the amount of $200,000 for this purpose. I had a question on this one too.
Okay.
It was Hellas who had the recommendation, hey, let's tear this down and build new stuff and we'll do it for you. And we said yes, not going out for bid, not.
Well, one of the reasons that we're bringing it to you is because if Hellas were to return to Midland, then we'd likely see a significant increase in the cost to do this, because whoever's going to come in and do it is going to be from out of town. And so we have an opportunity with them already here doing all of the stadiums that we would benefit from the fact that they don't have to go back participate in a solicitation process because they're on a buy board and can simply save the district a significant amount of money by doing it since they're already in town.
Any other questions? Number 7, approve an interlocal agreement with the County of El Paso allowing the Ysleta Independent School District to participate with the county in conducting a survey of the general prevailing rate of per diem wages in the district to comply with the Texas Government Code, Chapter 2258, which requires that workers employed on a public works project on behalf of the district not be paid less than the general prevailing rate of per diem wages in the district for work of a similar character. No questions. We move on to policy action items. Number 1, adopt proposed Ysleta-specific language for policy FDB, admissions, intra-district transfers, and classroom assignments. Number 2, adopt proposed Ysleta-specific language for policy BBG, board members' compensation and expense. 3, approve Ysleta-specific revisions to policy BQA, planning and decision-making process, district level. Number 4, adopt on first reading Ysleta-specific revisions to policy DNA, performance appraisal evaluation of teachers, effective July 1st, 2016. After closed session, our second action item agendas. Number 1, consider and take possible action to approve the proposed contract amendment for Dr. Xavier De La Torre as superintendent of Ysleta ISD. There's no other questions or comments. Request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.